Welcome back to ZHA My Training. This is week 2, part 2, migrating, or in this case, MASH blend shapes with repeating patterns and control over the blend shapes using a fall-off node, which can take the form of a fall-off node itself, or as we'll explore, other items can be used like geometry, like curves or other polygons, and as such. So you can see here, as I move this around, it affects how much of the blend shape is, or in this case the shutters are open or closed position, which is what the design of the building is for. Okay, so let's get started. So first we're going to create this element, and then we're going to set up some basic rigging using clusters to be able to animate the panels. And then once we've done that, then we'll use MASH to create a large panel or replicated pattern of these, and then we'll finally use a bend deformer to bend this into position, into shape. Right, let's get started. New, that's save. Okay. Now Maya thankfully has a disk generation tool here, which if you shift and create here, you create your disk. Now this will get us the shape of this asset very quickly by just changing the values. So if we select the node that controls the values, tell it how many sides. We know there are 6. We know we want, we'll do 0 at the moment, so that gives us our hexagon. If we try quads and then say 1 division, not quite. I mean, that gives us a center line, but it doesn't really give us the shape we want. So if we do more than quads, we start ending up back where we were again. So we're still not getting the shape we want. So let's change it from quads to triangles. Okay, so this is getting closer. In fact, that could be, you only need the center line for each of those. So let's try 3. They just get smaller. So we need more lines than that. So I went to 2 or 1, and let's change from triangles to pi. And then change from 1 to 2. Aha! Now we have that shape that we can see in the reference. So we can see you've got the inverted sort of V shape there. That's what we're after. So that's good. So what happens if we do 3? Perfect. Okay, so 3 is like creating, it does create these extra faces we don't need, but it does create the entire panel without having to do any edge inserts or anything else, which is great. So let's go ahead and remove the extra faces we don't need and start creating the clusters. So let's do that first. So I'm going to do Shift, right click. No, I don't even need to do that. Right click, face, hold down tab, and then we just quickly just select all of these faces we want to remove. This will make it much easier for doing the clusters. When I did this in the class, they did it the hard way, and I've subsequently improved the methodology. So once we've done that, I'll look at it from the top. Now to make this repeat more easily, we've missed one face. You can go to it, delete that one. To make this repeat more easily, we want it on its toe, on its tip here. So I'm going to rotate the object. Where is it? Rotate. We're going to rotate this 30 degrees. So it's exactly 1/6 rotation. Okay, perfect. So that's the shape we want. Right. So let's freeze this so it doesn't have that transform in it. So we'll go to Modify, Freeze Transformation. So if you before I do this, so at the moment we've got a rotation that's in there, so we only need to freeze rotation. So let's do that. Can you see that? The rotation is now frozen out. It now thinks it's back to 0. So for Maya's purposes, this hasn't been rotated. It's important because when you repeat something, you don't want to carry over some history of rotation or whatnot. Alright, so let's start creating our clusters. So the easiest way to make the clusters, just like the lesson before, I am going to change into a component mode. Right click and go to vertex. You'll see the point of doing component mode in a moment. So let's select our first group of 3 vertices, and then let's create a cluster. So deform, cluster. Now when I click on it again, see it's already gone into the mode. So let's turn on edges so we can see them. So 1, 2, 3. Press G to repeat the operation, and let's work our way around. G, G. You get the idea. printing on the screen so you can see the keys I'm pressing. There we go. You guys have done a few lessons with me now, so you should be a little bit more savvy with the controls. Right. Now, the next problem we have is each of these clusters doesn't. If I was to scale this one, it's not going to. As you can see, it's not doing this symmetrically because the center point or pivot of this cluster isn't centered. So let's undo that. So let's do the centering. So if you press W to go to move, press Insert on the keyboard, and then move it. And that's a free movement. We don't want that. If I hold down V, it'll snap to that vertex. Okay. Now, before I go on and try doing this again, it's going to keep selecting the mesh. So let's get out of mesh mode and go into object mode. So we can do that. Right click. Oh, let's just do there. So we're in object mode, but we don't want to select the mesh anymore. So I'm going to turn off mesh selection up here. So now I can no longer select the mesh, but I can still select the clusters. So I can select the mesh in the outliner, but I can't. You see what I mean? You'll get the point. Okay, so if we take this cluster and do the same thing, insert. I don't know why that's at a funny angle. Not to worry. It's not. We're not concerned with. We're not doing rotations. We're doing positions. So let's insert, and let's snap that to there. That vertex. There we go. So let's. Okay, did that move it up? Well, it's flat. It doesn't matter. So it's absolutely fine. Sorry, I thought I'd put the peaks in yet, but I've worked quite cleverly this time around, and hold down V and snap it. Because there's no peaks, I can just quickly snap these into the centers. Because I know that's right, that is, and that is. Good. Cool. So we have our shapes. So let's press insert again on the keyboard to take us back to normal mode. Let's select all our clusters, and let's see what happens when we scale them. Press R on the keyboard to scale. I'm using the middle mouse button to do overall scale. Great, so we can go from open to closed. Very cool. Okay, so let's do that. So let's create our peaks. So let's do that first. Right click, vertex. One there, one there. Let's turn on our mesh again. Let's move these up. I don't want to be too deep, but yeah, just enough to give the effect we want. Okay. Another thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make these, because at the moment the normals are trying to smooth these out as if they were curves. It gives the appearance of curves, we know they're not. So, but we actually want to see the polygons. So let's harden the normal. So shift, no, so spacebar. Oh, again, I'll get the right thing. Right click object mode, spacebar, mesh display, hard edge. Click off, there you go. You can see now you've got the more of the faceting. It looks a little bit like the Mercedes logo, but lots of them, 6 of them. Anyways, let's get on to the next stage. Welcome back. This is stage 2 of the MASH tutorial. We've got our clusters all ready to go, and we're going to start replicating this. So let's begin. Simply select your mesh, go to the MASH menu, and create MASH network. Before I do that, I'm just going to go into the dialog. I'm going to hit reset because we want everything to default. So if you don't do anything, you just leave it as a reset. That's ready to go. But before I do that, so you've got mesh is what we want because it will be deforming it later. But if you wanted to say create a forest of trees which have got more polygons than you go over a big stick at, instance would be the way to do that. And hopefully that will find time to do a tutorial for the values of instancing over surfaces for creating lots of detail for like leaves or trees or people. And but for now we'll leave it like that. So here we go. So we'll hit apply. That will create a copy in a given orientation, which in this case is 10. Now I've put the MASH editor in here. The way I did that is I did this. I went to MASH editor, which brings up the floating menu, and I just dropped it in the back here like that. Okay, so the distribute. Now you could create the pattern with distribute if you could get these numbers exactly as you wanted, and then the exact number, and then it would work. But if you say we wanted to add 5 more, you'd be having to recalculate this distance. This relationship would have to be calculated. So that's way too dull for me. So I'm going to ask it to replicate 1, in effect be inert in the tree. If you turn it off, it will disable the whole tree. So we have to have something. So that this should be set to 1, effectively does nothing. So just put that to 0 just to be absolutely straight about it. Okay, so the node we do want is the replicator node. So we press this little bit here, go here, there we go, and we'll give it a replicant, let's say 3. Okay, so that's doing the tip to tip, but we want to go a different direction. So let me just check my values. So I'm going to put in 1.5 here, and then further down in the pattern section, in the X offset, we want that to be minus 0.866. There we go. Now you can see that our pattern does a zigzag effect because this is offsetting it, and so one's doing a translate and one's doing an offset of the translation. So it's like move over here but then move up. So for now, if I dial the number of replicants, so let's say put in 10 or say 20, they're all live. So if I go back to our outliner, select our clusters and just simply scale that, you can see all of them are connected, which is very, very cool. So that's our first row of replicants. Now we need to do the vertical row. So like I said, all live, which is really, really cool, because we'll be using that to create 2 versions of this array of shapes before then bending it into position. And then once we've got it all in our position where we want it, then we can create our blend shape and then our influencer. So let's do that next. So go back to the MASH editor. We've got a replicator, and we're gonna not delete that. You could if you wanted to, but we're not going to. We're gonna replicate it again. So the replicator for the values for this one. So let's take this to 0 again. Let's put in like 10 here, and I've got a value of 1.732, which gives us what we want. In fact, that's ready. There you go. Don't have to do anything else. That is doing its job. We just need to know how many. So I think for this we'll do 20. So now we've got a really good size panel. Lots and lots of these guys. I'm going to put edge smoothing on so you can just make it look a bit prettier. And going back to our, again, if you go back to our clusters, they're still live. It's very cool. We could do the blend shape in a flat form, but that would be cheating. We want to do it on the cylinder because that's how we roll in this training. Okay, I'm going to save this as a stage because it can be quite complicated, and yeah, I'm going to save this now. Thank you. File save as. This one's going to be stage 2. And now we're going to start with stage 3. Okay, so we've got effectively our panel. So we need the 2 positions. So I'm simply going to take our cluster, and I'm going to scale them until I find I'm happy with that being the open position. I'm actually even going to move them down to make it look like they're rotating, so that this length of edge here remains roughly the same. So I'm going to do that, because I'd imagine these things are rotating in that manner. It's just an extra detail I'm adding to the system, but I think we'll give it a little bit of extra realism. Okay, so when we've got that, we select our mesh and do Control D, which makes a replicant of that, and I'm going to call that _open. Cool, that's our first mesh. So we're going to hide that. Go back to our clusters again. So now we can take away our translation. Oh, no, see, I did that only on one cluster. You see that? So if I undo that, it only did it on one. But if I go to the channel box and take that away, it does it to all of them, which is important. And we'll change the scale of this back to 1. Maybe 1.5. Ah, would you ever even know? 1.5 actually closes it perfectly. That was a fluke. We like those ones. So now we have the same mesh again, but this time in closed position. So this is where we duplicate the master mesh again. Control D, and we'll call this one _closed. Alright, so we're actually done with all this construction history, so I'm going to group it, call it construction GRP. So I know it's just a habit I have of calling groups with GRP. Turn these on. So right now we could do the blend shapes, but we want to do some bending first. So what we want to do is bend this into position. So I'm going to hide this so you can't see that. So let's do this one first. So we want to do deform, nonlinear, bend. It's never in the right orientation, so let's just put in a curvature of 180. There we go. And I'm going to rotate it this way. Oh. Well, you can create some very cool patterns like this. But we want a cylinder, so let's just do that. So our rotation here, that's 0, 0, 0. Oh, that way. I don't know why that's coning. 0, 0, 90. Cool. Where's everything all squiffy? Custom, no, we want object. There we go. I don't know why that was set to custom. Weird. Okay, so that's our first shape. We're going to do exactly the same thing. In fact, actually, do you know what? Delete that bend handle. There's no rules to say that you can't actually bend two objects at the same time. So let's just select both the meshes. I was going to make two like an idiot. Okay, let's do bend. Yes, we all get caught out. Okay, so 360, no, 180. I'll get it right in a minute. 180, and this is 90, I thought. There we go. So now we've got both shapes bending together. If you hide the closed, there's the open. Show the closed, hide the open. There's the closed. Excellent. I'm going to do minus 90 because it's inside out at the moment. You can see it's dark on the outside and we don't want that, so let's do this as minus, which will spin it. There we go, so now it's flipped the other way. And really, what we need to do now, I'm happy with that as my shape. I'm going to select both the meshes, these ones, and I'm going to delete the history, which is going to freeze the bend. So let's do that. Shift, Alt, D. Notice that as we delete the history, the bend deformer disappeared. That's great. Okay, let's rotate this up. You can undo, hold J to make it snap to an angle as it rotates up. Now we've got effectively our tower. Now all we need to do is do the blend shape between the two objects, okay? So let's use open as our default and close as our non-default. So now we've got, so this will be the building's default, open, so people can see outside. That's a very cool pattern. Right, so we'll select open, the mesh. We'll go to MASH, utilities, MASH, blend, deformer. That should be it there. Sorry, let's go to here. It's not appearing here. It's kind of hidden in the tree here, so if we just keep going across here, there it is. There's the node we want, so I'm going to select it so we hold on to this node. Okay, so I've flicked open the connections tab, and we have blend mesh and guide mesh. So we want to put in the closed one into here by I'm picking it up with the middle mouse, dragging it, and then letting go. We'll drop that into the connection. So now if I drag the blend, they open and close. It does it over the entire surface, but that's okay, because we're going to tell it when to do it. So how do we do that? Well, if we scroll further, there's so many dials to play with on this, but one we're interested in is the fall off object. And we right click on here and go create. And it's created that fall off object we saw at the beginning in the first stage. And if I bring this in and close, yeah, it's opening and closing, but it's not exactly doing it in the manner we were expecting. It's kind of doing it in a bit of a random fashion. So why is that? Well, it turns out that this is working on faces, not vertexes, and their ordering is different. So if I double click on that little node there, we can change it. There should be somewhere around here. Under additional settings, we've got this, change that to vertex, and now we're cooking with gas. So if I move this out, So this is like sun hitting it, and closes up the doors, and then reopens again. Now at the moment it's a sphere, but there's nothing to say what that has to be a sphere. We can make it a cube. And so in theory we can just scale this up vertically. We can also change our zone of interference in the middle there. Move that up. So now it will behave more like the building in real life. And you can just play around with this, how big or small this is. It moves nearer or further away the object. And you've got yourself the ability to open and close the shutters based on, say, a sun direction. Welcome to stage 4. In this tutorial of the same one, we're going to add in these details. So we've got these sort of struts and these pivots, which go across the entire object, which is very, very cool. And if it's all fully live, now obviously this is going to make the mesh considerably heavier, but let's just move this to show you that it still all works. If I move this out, he says, can I see that? Oh, it's the wrong object. Do this one. Move this one out. There we go. This is considerably slow because it's moving a lot more geometry. So I'm going to show you how to do this. For that we're going to need stage 3. So open up stage 3 as our starting point. Okay. Well, it's really simple what we need to do, so I'm just going to hide the objects I don't want to look at. I don't want to look at the faller for the moment. I just want to focus on this mesh that we've got here. And what we first need to do is create a cylinder. So let's do that. So shift, create our cylinder. Now, because there's going to be an awful lot of these, we want to reduce this down to the minimum number of edges and faces. So let's do that. So using T on our keyboard. Oh, excuse me. Using T on our keyboard, we can change that. So let's change this. I'd say 8 would be a good minimum, and radius we want this to be quite small, 0.1, maybe 0.02, so it's very thin. Okay, and so this is ready to put onto here. So again, so select our object. Let's go to our mesh menu, create network, create a line of them. Here's our distribute. So before this is obviously linear. There's other distributions as radial, which is kind of interesting, like a clock face. Spherical, increase numbers. It'll create like a volume. Mesh, grid. So you can specify a grid formation. But what we're interested in, I mean, you could just keep going, paint effects, all sorts of things. And volume, brilliant. Anyway, so we're interested in this mesh because we want to drive the position of this scatter or this distribution across all of the edges. So we'll choose scatter, and the type we'll choose edge because you want it to run along each of these. So let's do that. So it's asking for an input mesh, a bit like the time before where we dragged in the object. So the out mesh is our master, and that's going to become our input. So in the outliner, middle mouse click to pick it up, drag it over, and drop it into the input mesh. Where have they gone? They've gone over here. Now it's only doing a small section. That's absolutely fine. But what we want to do is we want to scale these because they're all different lengths, and so we want to do that. So we'll hit this. There we go. It's scaling them. Still not quite got the proportions right. So what we can do is go back to our cylinder, go back to its recipe, and change it to 0.01. That's quite good. And then the height we can adjust as well. So basically it fits according to what we want. So remember we're going to be putting in, so a height of 1 is actually good. So we'll do 1. That would make sense because that's the entire length. And then it's just the radius. So it's really what you feel. I think that looks good for us. We could even put a rounded cap on there. So that's quite interesting. But remember, there's going to be so many of these, we want to keep it as lean as possible. Do not press 3. Now at the moment, it's only doing X number at the moment. So if we go back to our distribute node, go to the top, it's currently doing a count of 100. Really? Oh yeah, I suppose. So that just gives you an idea of how many edges there are in here. So it's thousands, okay? So in order to not just have to work out and keep, I mean, you could just keep adding until you get to the number, you flood it that way, or you can just ask it to flood. So let's do that. This will take a little while. Well, not too bad on my computer. The laptop will take a bit longer, but you guys are using workstations too. So that has got our edges on there, which is brilliant. That didn't take very long. Okay, so let's do the caps. Simple again. So what we're going to do is we're going to create shift. I'm going to create a sphere. So we give an idea. So the cylinder was really small. I mean, what was it? 0.01 radius. So if we select our sphere, radius 0.015, it's going to be slightly bigger than the struts that will show up. It's still too dense, there's too many polygons here, so let's put this into 8 by 4 and create like a nice little... So if that was smoothed at render time, it would create a nice shape, but it will create, it'll smooth out, so it'll look like that. Okay, going back. Right, so let's drop this onto our mesh again. So it's our repro mesh. So we want to put this, shift, mash, create network. So now it's creating a network. If we go to the, mesh editor, so let's rename this. This one's struts, and we'll call this one pivots. Balls. Okay. Right, so again, it's done that linear distribution. You can see here it's done a line. We're not interested in that. Or is it balls? So we want to do mesh. And scatter, we want to do it on vertex. But it doesn't know what mesh it is. So let's tell it what mesh it is. It's this one. Drag it in again. Input. That's done it. And if I just hit the flood, there we go. Just so you can see what we're doing. So that's actually completed the tutorial. If I hide a repro mesh, you're just left with the skeleton, which is very cool. Okay, let's turn on our repro mesh again, put it back on. Let's take our fall off object and let's move it out, just to show that this is all live. There we go. And that is how to scatter geometry along edges and across points. There's lots of more tutorials online and on YouTube by the author of the software MASH. The person's name is Ian Waters, not related. He speaks fast as well, so but luckily he's on video form, so you can pause him. But yeah, go off and explore his stuff. As I said, you'll find him on YouTube. All the stuff I've shown you today, I've learned from his YouTube videos. So hopefully this will get your feet wet into MASH and start creating some beautiful designs. Thank you.